Firstly, we want to minimize the risk of super spreader events even further. As the number of people with active infections rises, there is a greater risk of an infected person without symptoms being present in a gathering and spreading the virus. Secondly, we want to decrease unsafe interactions between people. Thirdly, we want to increase the implementation of our 5 key prevention measures, they being social distancing, the wearing of masks, hand hygiene, symptom checking and testing. Fourthly, we want to decrease the burden on healthcare services so that resources can be directed to meet the needs of COVID-19 and other patients. These are the key reasons. Under the adjusted Level 3 regulations, all indoor and outdoor gatherings will be prohibited for 14 days from midnight to night, except for funerals and other limited exceptions as detailed in the regulations such as restaurants, museums, gyms, casinos. These will further be set out by the Minister in regulations and will be reviewed after that period. Funerals may not be attended by more than 50 people with social distancing. Every business premise must determine the maximum number of staff and customers permitted at any one time based on the social distancing guidelines and may not exceed that limit. Coming to curfew. The nationwide curfew will be extended from 9 p.m. to 6 a.m. Apart from permitted workers and for medical and security emergencies, nobody, and that means nobody, is allowed outside their place of residence during curfew. Non-essential establishments, including shops, restaurants, bars, and all cultural venues, must close at 8 p.m. The list of these establishments will be released shortly. We now know that the simplest and most effective way to reduce transmission of the coronavirus is to wear a cloth mask that covers the nose and the mouth whenever in public. Until now, the owners and managers of shops and public buildings, employers and operators of public transport have had a legal responsibility to ensure that everyone entering their premises or vehicle is wearing a mask. But given the grave danger our country now faces, the adjusted Level 3 regulations will make every individual, meaning everyone, responsible legally for wearing a mask in public. From now on, it is compulsory for every person to wear a mask in a public space. A person who does not wear a mask covering over their nose and mouth in a public place will be committing an offense. A person who does not wear a mask could be arrested and prosecuted. On conviction, they will be liable to a fine or to imprisonment for a period not exceeding 6 months, or both a fine and imprisonment. I must admit that this is a drastic measure, but it is now necessary to ensure compliance with the most basic of preventative measures. We remain particularly concerned about the elderly and those with comorbidities, that is, with other ailments, and ask that they do their utmost to protect themselves from the virus, especially minimizing their contact with other people. One of the more difficult areas of regulation relates to the sale of alcohol. The liquor industry is a major employer and an important contributor to our economy. Our priority at this time, however, must be to save lives. Reckless behavior due to alcohol intoxication has contributed to increased transmission. Alcohol-related accidents and violence are putting pressure on our hospital emergency units. As we head to in the early days of the lockdown, we now have to flatten the curve to protect the capacity of our healthcare system, to enable it to respond effectively to this new wave of infections. In such a scenario, every piece of medical equipment, every hospital bed, every healthcare worker, and every oxygen tank is needed to save lives. Therefore, under the strengthened regulations, the sale of alcohol from retail outlets and on-site consumption of alcohol will not be permitted. The prohibition on consuming alcohol in public spaces like parks and beaches remains. Distribution and transportation will be prohibited with exceptions that will be explained by the Minister. These regulations may be reviewed within the next few weeks if we see a sustained decline in infections and hospital admissions as we did before. In effect, the adjusted Level 3 regulations will keep the economy open while strengthening measures to reduce transmission. With a few exceptions, businesses may continue to operate as long as all relevant health protocols and social distancing measures are adhered to. Nightclubs and businesses engaged in the sale and transportation of liquor will not be allowed to operate. The Level 3 restrictions will remain in place until the 15th of January 2021. These measures will be reviewed at that time on the basis of the state of the pandemic in our country. When I last addressed you, I indicated that in managing the pandemic, we would follow a differentiated approach that took into account the rise in infections in particular municipalities. Municipalities defined as hotspots will be subject to additional restrictions until there is a clear and sustained decline in infections. Following a review of the latest